Hey everybody, so I'm standing next to the most crazy, the most outlandish, the most insane BMW M car they have ever produced. This is the BMW XM, and it blows me away in so many good and kind of weird ways. And in this video, we're going over the top 10 gadgets and gizmos that make this new BMW XM so berserk. Okay, so let's start with number 10, the name. XM. You see, every other BMW M product in the lineup is a variant on a 3 Series or a 4 Series or even an X3 or an X4, but the XM is its own individual product. This is an M car that's only available as this 4-door SUV. It's kind of its own mini brand within the brand, and that certainly is unusual. Number 9 is the powertrain. So this uses a very unusual, very sophisticated setup that we typically don't see from the M division. Now the engine alone seems pretty standard. It's a V8 with twin turbos, and it alone makes 483 horsepower. This is the S68 is the internal powertrain on this engine. But what's unusual about the setup is it's not only a twin-turbo V8, it's mated to an electrical architecture. So in front of the 8-speed ZF transmission is BMW's 5th generation of electric motor that alone makes 194 horsepower. So the total system output, combining internal combustion power and the electric system, 644 horsepower. And there's a faster version of this car, not called the competition, but label red label, that makes over 700 horsepower. So BMW is going completely off the rails with this new powertrain from an M standpoint, and we'll get it on the road here in a second and see what that means in terms of performance. Now, number 8 is the all-electric range on this vehicle, because it can be driven on electricity alone for up to about 30 miles, and you fill it up right here with electricity on the front left of the vehicle. Now, what's unusual about this is the battery is 29.5 kilowatt hours. When you consider that the Nissan Leaf, the game changer that Nissan launched like 10 plus years ago, launched with a 24 kilowatt hour battery, the hybrid system alone in this car has a larger battery than that at 29.5 kilowatt hours. Pretty wild. Now, number 7. It has to be the overall look. BMW is doing some really interesting things with the design on this car, and some relatively unusual things that we don't see very often. For example, at the rear of the vehicle, where you'd expect to find the BMW badge located prominently in the center, it's missing altogether. Instead, you get XM outlined in gold, and then the BMW badge is located in 2 places up here on the left and the right of the rear window. Pretty unusual. Another unusual thing about the back is, being an M car, you'd expect it to have some kind of cool wing or spoiler or flares back here, but it's pretty subdued in the way it looks until you check out the stacked tailpipes. Now, what's cool about this is a genuine tailpipe. It's not some simulated plastic thing. You can actually see that's where the exhaust port comes out, and there's one at the bottom with an integrated flap so you can tone down or elevate the noise. But that is pretty unusual. Now, speaking of unusual things, number 6 on my list is something I haven't seen in a while in many cars. It's this rub strip. So rather than having a continuous piece of sheet metal down the side of the XM, you actually have these integrated plastic strips. In this case, this car is all blacked out. There's not a single bit of chrome, but that is a pretty unusual look. And contrast that against these wheels, 22-inch wheels with this funky 2-tone design. We have some aero profile look here to help with efficiency. Red brake calipers and M there located on the side. These are Pirelli P0 tires in a 315/35 R22, an insanely large tire. And then as we come along to the front here, Ian, you can see that the front is actually staggered with the 275/40 R22 in the front. So we got a narrower tire in the front than the rear. And then if you look in there, kind of interesting, it's actually rolling on a coil spring, which is a little bit unusual for an M car. Now, there are certain M components which have still been retained. For example, the mirror, right? You still have this little fin, which has been such a showcase for M for so many years. And then in the front, they are going crazy. The kidney grille, huge. It's illuminated around the edge here, and then these enormous nostrils around the front, enormous ducting around the wheels. One of the most bold BMW fascias ever put into a car, with this 2 stacked headlight design, right, where you have the headlight and then the running lights separate units. Very, very cool. Actually, I think that the front end is not unattractive because the car is so large and imposing. The huge kidney grills kind of play off of that, and you got these like dual power domes here on the hood, which kind of feed into the kidney grills. But let's hop into the inside as we look into number 5, because I want to start out with the headliner. As we open up the door and look up, you may notice that this is one of the funkiest headliners ever fitted to a car, with the M colors there projected when you unlock the vehicle, and then it goes to a solid color eventually. But what's unusual is that a headliner is a part of a car which is so often forgotten from a luxury standpoint. Usually it's just, you know, some kind of vinyl, maybe a fabric. On a fancy car it might be Alcantara, but on the XM it's actually this geometric pattern design, which I think is a really interesting look and super cool. It really makes the interior feel premium and elevates it above some other ultra premium cars in this segment, which I think is really cool. And we see lots and lots of detail on the inside. Even as we come around to the rear of the car, one of the kind of funkier things included in this vehicle is this bag. Look at this. I have seen many ways to incorporate a charger, the charge connector, into a car, but this bag is next level. Now the actual connector itself, we're just looking at a pretty standard EVSC here with your J1772 port plug there, but the bag it comes in is like a carry-on you'd expect to see in a first-class lounge, with XM embroidered there on the side. Now the trunk, pretty basic trunk area back here. No floor storage to speak of. Of course, you do have to keep that 29.5 kilowatt hour battery somewhere. And then you've got these nice little details. But even like the top of the trunk lid here, you can see like it's all geometric. So lots of attention to detail on the inside of this car. But let's go to number 4. And for number 4, we're going to hop in and start it up. Now this is by far the most luxurious M car I've ever experienced. You know, if you hop into like a X6M, X5M, some of the competition models, especially the seats, are very aggressive. BMW now has those little crotch bolsters, but these seats in this model are some of the most comfortable M seats I've ever experienced. And they're illuminated with XM there on the backrest, which is a nice look. But lots of things coming together here at number 4. So we've got leathers, we've got stitching, and we've got carbon fiber everywhere. So BMW is going after a lot of different audiences, right? They want you to know that, yes, this is a sporty car. Yes, it is deserving of the M badge, which you see throughout. But then they also incorporate stuff like the suede over everything, suede-lined visor, stuff like that, right? Which kind of remind you that this is an M car, but it's the most luxurious M car to date. Push the start button here. That'll bring the XM into life, and that's a little unusual because you've got a number of different drive modes, and that's going to be our number 3 here. If we push the M hybrid mode, you can see we have a couple of different settings: hybrid, electric, and e-control. Now in hybrid mode, it's going to alternate between gasoline and electric, but if we go into the electric mode alone, it's going to lock this car into an electric setting, and now you can drive this car completely silently. So if you were, for example, waking up in the morning to go to work, you didn't want to fire up that huge twin turbo V8 to wake up your neighbors, you can put it into the electric mode and drive it around for, like I said, roughly 30 miles or so on e-power alone, and it's very smooth in the electric mode. It does simulate a little bit of sound, which I actually think they did a pretty nice job of, not being overwhelming, but being pretty elegant in the way it kind of plays itself out. And you can see, you can accelerate full throttle there. It's not fast by any means, and it does shift through that 8-speed transmission, so you can feel little pauses as it changes gears, but it certainly is quick enough to drive around, accelerate up through town. Top speed in electric mode is about 87 miles. Now there's also an e-control mode, so if we wanted to save that electricity for future driving, stick it in e-control, and then that's going to allow you to access the e-power later on in your drive. Now, number 2 on my list has to be this latest generation of iDrive touchscreen. It's great. Of course, BMW launched the iDrive in the 7 Series back in the early 2000s, and they got a lot of criticism for it in the way that it incorporated, in the way that it worked with the car. Everything was done through this little spinny knob thing, which they still have down here. You can still control iDrive via this setting, but it's much more intuitive now, much more iPhone-like in the way it lays out the apps. I find it to be really easy to understand, lots of convenient shortcuts, really high resolution, and it's behind this curved display, which is fantastic. fantastic. So iDrive has finally hit its stride. I'm happy to say they've finally done a really good job with making this screen easy to use, functional, and also very futuristic. But I think it's time we talk about number one, which has to be the way this car drives, because it's very heavy. It doesn't feel small or spry like a traditional M car might, be it M2, M3. They're very crisp in their driving experience. This car certainly feels all the weight. You get the sense that there's a lot going on behind the steering, and there is. We do have four-wheel steering in this car, which helps it navigate around turns, helps it feel smaller than it might if it had just traditional steering, but by no means does it feel particularly spry. That isn't to say it doesn't feel insanely fast. So if I go into my M mode setting here, we can engage a higher performance mode. We also have different settings on the transmission, which you can activate here via these little toggles up and down. And then when you put your foot down, that 4.4 liter springs into life, and this thing boogies. Boy, does it haul down the road. It takes a little bit of time for that engine to kick in, because we were in hybrid mode there. We were running on electricity, but then that ICE engine engages, it downshifts a couple cogs, and you just rock it down the road. And what's cool about this is, unlike a conventional EV where you get a huge spurt of electrification and then it feels like it slows down as you get in higher speeds, with that twin turbo V8 this can accelerate up to 168 miles an hour depending on the performance package you have on this car, and it pulls strong well into highway speeds. It doesn't quite have that immediate push of a full EV. That 194 horsepower electrical architecture does give you a nice little jump, but it doesn't have the insane, acceleration off the bat of like a Model 3 Performance or a Model S Plaid. But once you get this thing moving, it really boogies. And they say 0 to 16 right around 3.5 seconds, 3.7 seconds, somewhere in that territory. Now, overall, is it worthy of the M badge? I think it is, because once you dial it in, it is amazing what this car can do with those 315 width tires in the back and the 275s in the front and the four-wheel steering. And it's just, this thing corners and accelerates and does things that you would never expect out of a car of this comfort level and the size, with massaging seats and heated seats and ventilated seats and heated steering wheels and all that. And then you can tone it down, put it back into the electric mode, and just cruise as if it were the comfiest 7 Series you've ever been in. So this is an impressive machine. It's also an impressive price. Starts at $159,995, 160 grand plus for this XM. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Has BMW done a good thing with kind of differentiating this car from the typical M lineup? And as always, it's been Tommy and Ian behind the camera. We'll see you on the next video.